Section 13 of Selections of the History of the Franks. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. Book 8. In Christ's name, here begins Book 8. 33. Now there was in these days in the city of Paris a woman who said to the inhabitants, O flee from the city, and know that it must be burned with fire. And when she was ridiculed by many for saying this on the evidence of lots and because of some idle dream, or at the urging of a midday demon, she replied, It is not as you say, for I say truly that I saw in a vision a man all illumined coming from the church of St. Vincent, holding a torch in his hand, and setting fire to the houses of the merchants one after another. Then the third night after the woman made this prophecy, at twilight a certain citizen took a light and went into the storehouse, and took oil and other necessary things, and went out, leaving the light close by the cask of oil. This was the house next the gate, which is towards the south. From this light the house caught fire and burned, and from it others began to catch. Then the fire threatened the prisoners. But the blessed Germanus appeared to them, and broke the posts and chains by which they were bound, and opened the prison door, and allowed all the prisoners to go safe. They went forth and took refuge in the church of St. Vincent, in which is the blessed bishop's tomb. Now when the flame was carried hither and thither through the whole city by the high wind, and the fire had the complete mastery, it began to approach another gate, where there was an oratory of the blessed Martin, which had been placed there because he had there cured a case of leprosy with a kiss. The man who had built it of interwoven branches, trusting in God and confident of the blessed Martin's power, took refuge within its walls with his property, saying, I believe and have faith that he who has so often mastered fire, and at this place by a kiss made a leper's skin clean, will keep the fire from here. When the fire came near, the great masses of flame swept along, but when they touched the wall of the oratory, they were extinguished at once. But the people kept calling to the man and woman, Run if you wish to save yourselves, for a mass of fire is rushing on you. See, ashes and coals are falling around you like a heavy rain. Leave the oratory, or you will be burned in the fire. But they kept on praying, and were never moved by these words. And the woman, who was armed with the strongest faith in the power of the blessed bishop, never moved from the window through which the flames sometimes entered. And so great was the power of the blessed bishop that he not only saved this oratory together with his followers' house, but he did not permit the flames to injure the other houses which were around. There the fire ceased, which had broken out on one side of the bridge, and on the other side it burned all so completely that only the river stopped it. However, the churches with the houses attached to them were not burned. It was said that this city had been, as it were, consecrated in ancient times, so that not only fire could not prevail there, but snakes and mice could not appear. But lately, when a channel under the bridge had been cleaned, and the mud which filled it had been taken out, they found a snake and a mouse of bronze. They were removed, and after that mice without number and snakes appeared, and fires began to take place. 34. Inasmuch as the prince of darkness has 1,000 arts of doing injury, I will relate what lately happened to recluses vowed to God. Vennoc, a Breton, who had become a priest, as we have told in another book, was so given up to abstinence that he wore only garments made of skins, and ate wild herbs in a raw state, and merely touched the wine to his lips, so that one would think he was kissing it rather than drinking. But as the devout in their generosity often gave him vessels of this liquor, sad to say, he learned to drink immoderately, and to be so given up to it as to be generally seen drunk. And so, as his drunkenness grew worse and time went on, he was seized by a demon, and so violently harassed that he would seize a knife of any kind of weapon or stone or club that he could lay hands on, and run after men in an insane rage. And it became necessary to bind him in chains and imprison him in a cell. After raging under this punishment for 2 years, he died. There was also Antholius of Bordeaux. When a boy of 12 years old, it is said, the servant of a merchant, he asked to be allowed to become a recluse. His master opposed him a long time, thinking he would grow lukewarm, and that at his age he could not attain to what he wished. But he was at length overcome by his servant's entreaties, and permitted him to fulfill his desire. Now there was an old crypt, vaulted and very finely built, and in the corner of it was a little cell built of squared stones, in which there was hardly room for one man standing. The boy entered this cell, and remained in it 8 years or more, satisfied with very little food and drink, and devoting himself to watching and praying. After this he was seized with a great fear, and began to shout that he was being tortured internally. So it happened, by the aid, as I suppose, of the devil's soldiers, that he tore away the stones that shut him in, dashed the wall to the ground, and cried, wringing his hands, that the saints of God were causing him frightful torture. And when he had continued in this madness for a long time, and often mentioned the name of Saint Martin, and said he caused a more torture than the other saints, he was brought to Tours. But the evil spirit, because, I suppose, of the virtue and greatness of the saint, did not tear the man. He remained at Tours for the space of a year, and as he suffered no more, he returned. But later on he suffered from the trouble that he had been free from here. 35. An embassy from Spain to King Guthrum.